With the new year coming in 3 days, it's time to wrap things up with 2024 with a review of We Bare Bear's final episodes, Band of Outsiders. I've been thinking about this episode for a long time, considering that it ended up becoming one of the final episodes of the show, not to mention the final Baby Bears episode of its entirety before the spin-off became a thing in 2022. This episode takes place after Loey and the bear, after Iceberg gets separated from Loey, he has to find other ways to move forward with his life, considering that he was on an ice block that was part of the Arctic, but got breaking into pieces, so he's been transported to a different location where he needs to find other solutions to move forward without anyone guiding him. Which leads to him encountering the Band of Outsiders, Badger, Ashley, and Joe. Back then, I could care less about these characters, but over time, this episode is not only the episode where Icebell improves as a character, but also the fact that this episode has an excuse on existing in favor of Icy Nights 3, because this episode is slightly better than the other episodes that this show did when it came to antics from the Bears, instead of just making a third Icy Nights episode. It's honestly weird to consider that this ended up becoming one of the final episodes of this show, but also the fact that this show didn't forget about Loey, but at the same time, with this being one of the final episodes again, it's honestly weird to see him come back in a flashback while making a cameo in Icy Nights 2, but at the same time never returning due to the information that Icebell got from Icy Nights 2, which is really depressing judging of how that this episode is showcasing Icebell's development when it comes to him being nice towards others, especially since that Loey did told Icebell that the world is cruel, but at the same time, when there's kindness, he needs to be kind towards those. Which did carry on when it comes to Icebell growing up. But then again, with all this being one of the final episodes of this show, it's honestly bizarre, but really disappointing that the people who made this episode still remember Loey, but didn't even bother to take his character seriously, which sums up a lot that they didn't take any of the characters when it comes to non-animal characters seriously. Well, aside from Num Num. I would argue that this episode was mostly intending on Icebell's journeys being solo in the same ways as Grizz and Panda had when it came to their own separate solo episodes, but the thing is, those characters had one episode being solo when it comes to baby episodes, while this is Icebell's second solo episode as a baby. So for me personally, it sums up a lot that they did have plans by making more episodes. But at the same time, due to the production of what is happening, I'm going to assume that putting the focus on the movie was literally the end goal when it came to making these final episodes. But then again, with Loey intending to be part of one of the final episodes despite taking place in a flashback or a cameo, it makes this entire episode different than how it was back then, when it led to Icebell about to destroy anything inside of the bakery, which is owned by the person who kicked him out. He had a change of heart after remembering that Loey told him about kindness. But considering that the other characters, Badger, Ashley, and Joe, think otherwise, I'm assuming that they originally intended these characters as antagonists, with them being outsiders. But considering that they want them to be likable towards the end when it came to Icebell going on his own journey, which led to him meeting with the other characters, mainly Grizz and Panda from the We Bare Bears movie. It really gave me the impression that they originally intended these characters mostly as tools for Ice Bear. But then again, considering that they're kids and not really older in comparison to the other characters that we've seen in the Baby Bears episodes, where they're older than teenagers and sometimes adults. This is pretty much a first when it comes to bear characters as cubs hanging out with characters their age. Granted, the only episodes that I remember when it comes to the baby cubs hanging out with the kid characters were the beach episode where Panda has a crush towards a girl, and the Mexican wrestling episode. Well, it did center around a kid hanging out with the cubs. Granted, it wasn't the main factor of what's going on when it came to the kid doing any wrestling moves, at least from my knowledge, but those are literally the only examples, so I think that this was literally a first by having one of the baby bears hanging out with kids close to their age. Granted, I will admit that having a third Icy Nights episode would have made it worthwhile just before the series came to an end, until the movie came out the following year. But then again, this episode isn't really a bad option in comparison to the other episodes that I've seen that would have been better off replaced. Granted, the final episodes of We Bare Bears is mostly a mixed bag, considering of how everything has to come to an end of some sorts, especially with the following episode being Tapes and Charlie, which I did enjoy, but at the same time, you know that there was a lot more going on when it comes to other characters in the show that never interacted before, and it's too little too late for that. But then again, I wasn't really expecting a lot going on when it came to the final episode's Panda's birthday, which I did talk about on my birthday in 2021. But the episodic nature of this show, the episodes really feel a lot more different in a way where you really wanted to see more when it comes to the opportunities. But at the same time, it's just depressing that the direction that this show took, despite not the worst ever, since I still enjoy this show, I just feel like that me thinking of this show deserving one more season is honestly what makes people think that there are a lot of opportunities that this show would have tackled, which with the show having 4 seasons is enough, but with so many missed opportunities and thinking about them more and more, there is always going to be people that say that We Bare Bears deserves another season. Even if the spin-off We Baby Bears isn't a terrible spin-off or a terrible cartoon itself, it just really makes me depressed that what we see right now is basically what we're going to be getting, and there won't be a chance of making a 5th season of We Bare Bears due to the state that Cartoon Network is in. Cartoon Network Studios isn't dead, despite that they don't have the original building anymore. But with how limited they are nowadays, it's honestly going to be difficult for them to have multiple ideals when it comes to variety, which is going to be really unlikely to capture that same variety that they used to have several years ago. With that being said, I'm giving this episode a 7.75 out of 10, and the only thing I can think of is that, am I going to include the Band of Outsiders in my Canada fanfic of We Bare Bears? They don't live in Canada, with this taking place in a different location, but at the same time, I can have them take a trip to Canada, but then again, there's so many characters in my We Bare Bears fanfic currently that it's just going to be a lot more complicated to juggle them all. But there is no deadline when it comes to my We Bear Barrels fanfic. So it's literally the same way as my Steven Universe of the Creek fanfic. So with that being said, 2024 is officially over for me, and I'm heading into 2025. It may not be bigger than what I've been through when it came to Summerpalooza 5 Steven Universe Marathon, all the while getting stressed out when it came to schedules earlier this year, along with doing Halloween Mania 2 and the Gravity Falls analysis video and the Christmas fanfic. Let's just hope that next year will be a lot more simpler. Granted, there will be bigger projects, but at the end of the day, this year is way more bigger than what 2023 was. I'll see you guys in 2025.